I have Neil Gibson from Twisted Comics. Welcome, Neil. Great to have you on the Gravytrain. How's things with you?
Oh, very well, thanks. Very well. How are you?
Yeah, really, really good. So it's lovely to have you on. I mean, I've done a bit of research on Twisted Comics. I'd love to hear from your view. How did things come about? How did things start? And tell me about your journey.
Well, in terms of me getting into comics or making them?
Just a bit of both, really, because I understand that you're into comics previously, and then you've ended up turning it into a business.
Yeah. So when I went to boarding school, and at age 9, we were told, "Oh, you can't read comics. That's kid stuff." So I wasn't allowed to read the Beano or anything anymore.
Oh wow!
Yeah, my dad I used to love comics, so he used to buy them, and they'd find it. It was like they'd confiscate it. You know, they weren't allowed this trash.
Oh wow, really?
So,
Wow.
yeah, and then when I was 13, I picked up another Beano, and I read it, and I thought, God, this is trash. This is awful. It was so childish. And I read the occasional Spider-Man, I think, but then I grew up out of comics. Okay, and then
Sure.
I was after university, I was backpacking, and the film X-Men had just come out, and I had a joke that a friend was Wolverine, and I saw this toy Wolverine in a shop window, so I thought I'd buy it as a joke present. I went in there; it was a comic shop, and this was in Canada. And at that point, all the biggest names were English. You had Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, Garth Ennis, Grant Morrison, and they assumed I personally knew these people because I had a British accent.
Yeah.
I said, I never heard of them. And they said, "You've heard of Watchmen, though, what?" I said, "Watch what?" And they got this copy of this book, and they said, with such passion, buy this. And I remember feeling silly. I spent $30 on a book I didn't want, but it was just the passion that got me. But I read it, it changed my life because
Wow.
well, because it was, imagine if every single film you see was a cowboy western, right? And a bad one at that. And then suddenly you find a great, I don't know, horror or rom-com or thriller or something, I don't know. It's just a medium, and it can have incredible content that's so thoughtful and makes you pause and think. And it can be terrible as well. There are terrible comics as well. But I've loved the good ones, and that's what got me collecting them. I've got a massive library.
Yeah, there's some collection there for sure. So how long ago was this then? When did you buy that comic in Canada? How long ago was that?
That was in 2000.
2000. Okay.
And then I had my career, then I did an MBA and became a management consultant, and I was stuck in a project in Qatar, and it's just 2011, I think. And normally, if you work in consulting, you work till 10, well, past 10 every night. This one, I was back home in the hotel at 7. I was like, wow, I've got all this extra time. What do I do? So rather than watch TV, I thought I'd write my own comic as a hobby. And from having the first idea, an actual idea came because I was in this gleaming office building and wearing a suit, and I'd press a button on the phone and someone would come and take orders for drinks if I wanted tea or something. I look out the window, and then there's these Indian laborers working in slave-like conditions in 50 degrees Celsius. And I thought, this is such a difference in life purely based on where I was born. And I thought it was just how unfair it was. And that's what was the idea for my first story, which is in Twisted Dark. And so having the idea for the book and then having a 200-page comic was 9 months. I did everything in 9 months. And then I was really surprised at the reaction to it because it's my first thing I'd ever written. And yet it went to #1 on Amazon in the UK, which really? Because I love reading comics.
So how did you publish it? I mean, you've obviously you've created the story. How did you first go about publishing that to then be #1?
I didn't know what I was doing. I just had a go, and it's here. It's awful. This is the. I think there's only like 11 of these left. Oh, it's pretty dusty.
Wow.
So these are standard size comics, right? It's a standard size. I didn't know that. I made this in A4, so shops don't like it. It's the wrong size.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah.
I didn't know. Similarly, I lettered it myself. And the first thing you can tell with comics, whether it's professional or amateur, isn't the quality of the art, isn't the printing, it's the lettering. This looks awful to me now, but I didn't know any better. You start somewhere.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And yeah, it's full of mistakes, spelling mistakes, printing errors, a lot, but at least you start somewhere. And then you improve as you go along.
But that, I get. I mean, there's a long way between. I mean, I think creating your own comic from start to finish in 9 months and then putting it on Amazon and being number one is unbelievable. It's how did I mean you were in a job right back then? You were working in Qatar. You were how what was the transition from all of a sudden you've got this business, or was it a kind of phase thing? How did that come about?
Um, well, I didn't know if I could make it a success or not, but what made me decide to actually give it a risk was two things. One was Jim Carrey. His father hated being an accountant, but chose that career because it was safe. But then he lost his job, and said, "You can fail at something you don't like. You might as well try at something you do."
Yeah.
But the real one was this woman who works in assisted care, like people at the end of their life, and she said the most common regret amongst all the patients wasn't what they'd done, is what they hadn't tried, what they didn't do.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. But you also have to manage the downside. So like, if it didn't work, I knew I could still go back to my old job. I gave myself 2 years.
Still. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
And that was what 2011, 2012, something like that.
yeah. I quit in 2012 because the project came to an end. I was going back to the UK. I thought, well, now's a natural time to give it a shot.
Of course. Yeah.
The first year wasn't very good at all. My revenue was only £6,000 the first year, and then it was 17, then 40, then 60, then 100. It took a while.
Yeah.
But I think that with anyone who starts a business, you don't know how difficult it's going to be. You don't know anything really. You just have to just bite the bullet at some point.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously, I talked to a lot of founders about their journey and that point where it turned into a business. Sounds like, I mean, obviously, you'd have had predictable income, working your job, but it wasn't necessarily what you wanted to do. And then you've taken the leap, which is a big thing to do, and then it's gradually happened. But there must be a lot of pressure going back. You say that you, when you were doing that job in Qatar, you were doing your first comic at the same time, and then all of a sudden the pressure's on. You say year one you generated 6K. How do you keep going?
I just didn't think there's any other option. Like, if you're going to do something, you commit to it. It's like,
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't work as hard now as I used to work. My wife is in investment banking. Sometimes she'd come home after 10 because she's working that late, and I'd be delighted because I got to work later as well. But now that I have kids and things, I don't have as much time to dedicate to it. So I don't think I answered your question. Your exact question was, how do you not give up? I just think you just can't. You have to keep going through.
You have no choice.
Yeah.
But it would have been. I'd say it would have been very easy at the end of year one to earn 6K and say, I'm going to go back to what I was doing. But something's driven you on. Something's got you to I'm going to go for year two.
I think. Well, this is going to sound awful now. Well, no, it is. I came back to London and I joined these communities of people who want to make comics. Yeah. And I went there and I just thought, I found everyone so amateur-ish.
Okay.
Like, I've just started this and I'm no more than you. And and it just shocked me. It made me realize
that spurred. Do you think that spurred you on, thinking, well, actually, I'm onto something here because I'm better than these guys, or at least as good?
Yes, that's what got me. It was like, these people have been doing it for a while, and why are you so early in your journey? If you're doing,
you're the new kid on the block, and it's working.
But also, there's different routes to do it. Getting into comics, famously, the analogy is it's like a supermax prison facility. Like, breaking in is extremely hard, and as soon as you found a way in, that method of getting in is sealed, and no one else can get in because they've learned from that. That's people the joke people make about it. Everyone's journey in is difficult and different, but the two essential routes: you can either self-publish or you can work for other publishers. Now, if you go for other publishers like Marvel, the films, one of the films is based off the storyline that the comic book writer made, right? The film is based off that completely. how much money do you think the writers of the comic get for the film?
Yeah, you tell me. Go on.
They get flown to the premiere, get taken out for dinner, and get $5,000, and the film makes $1 billion.
Wow.
Right? So they own everything. You create Wolverine, you get nothing for that. So if you publish it yourself, you own everything, but it's a tiny pie. We have a bigger pie and a tiny slice. So it's a trade-off. And I decided actually I wanted to own everything because I wanted to have the ability to publish whatever I wanted. Because you can go to a publisher and say, I've got this great idea, and they say, yeah, but let's change this bit. And it's not your story. So
you wanted to have that creative control.
Yeah, so it's a longer journey and riskier, but then the payoff is bigger if you do it that way.
Yeah.
That's a journey.
And I would imagine there'd be a lot more satisfaction creatively.
Yes, and more stressed.
Yeah, sure, yeah. At what point did it turn into? I mean, you mentioned that you were number one on Amazon. So year one you did a bit. What happened sort of year 2 and 3? How did that pan out?
You ask good questions. So I had a magnum of champagne for when the company broke even, right? So I thought, yeah, okay, we're still
okay. Cool, yeah.
But it's complex because you make a profit, but then you're not making a profit again. And it sort of does that. And sometimes you go, oh no. And it's not a linear thing, which means the salary it is. Again, I'm not very good at following questions. My mind just keeps jumping around. Well, you're always
just really kind of what happened in year 2 and year 3? Because at the end of year 1, you've got a bit of a business, but it's not to me. You've got that. You've generated 6K. You're still going, but 6K is not going to pay the bills, right? So then it's kind of like at what point did you? I mean, you mentioned the magnum of champagne, and okay, you could have potentially opened that prematurely because then after that it dips a bit. But at what point did you feel that you've got it is now a business, even though with a lot of businesses you do have your ups and downs and whatnot?
I honestly don't know. I think it was just so slowly bleeding into it over time that so when I first started, I say, what do you do? I make comic books, but I used to be a management consultant, as if clinging to, that's a stamp of approval, right? Whereas now I make comic books. I don't, at some point I dropped the line. I used to be a management consultant.
Yeah. And any idea when that was?
No, it was just gradual. I only thought about it now when I was speaking to you. Yes,
just an evolution rather than a kind of
step change
overnight. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. So at what point did you did you go out and I mean, you have a website now. The brand was what was the previous brand before Twisted Comics?
TPub.
And what was the thinking? You changed what, 2023? Is that right?
Yeah. So the reason it was originally called T Publications because in bookshops it's by author. It's Jeffrey Archer, Isaac Asimov. It's by author's name. But in comic shops it's not, because no one cares. They want Spider-Man, they want Superman. It's by the title. So I thought my first book was called Twisted Dark, and I thought if people go there and they like my material and they can see the company logo, if it's all in the T section, they'll see, oh, the logo there. So they can it's all in one area.
Yeah.
So everything began with T, hence T Publications, but no one called us T Publications, they called us TPub. So we changed the name to TPub. But then we got an investor in, and he wanted the name changed to Twisted Comics, which is a much better title, really. So, yeah. So I'm known for my twist endings. So
okay.
I wish I thought of that name from the start, frankly.
Yeah, sure, but you didn't, and so that answers the question. So when did you create the website? When the WooCommerce website?
I don't know. We've had several iterations and I'm
sure.
one thing I will say that I think is useful for other founders, and it's something I learned from Tony Robbins, is that you can be one of three things to make a lot of money. You're either an artist or a skill producer, you're a manager, or you're an entrepreneur. And you need to figure out which one you are. And I thought for most of my life I was a manager because I was good at that in my previous role.
Sure.
I'm very good at optimization. That's why improving things. I'm not really an entrepreneur, but I had to come at all sort of three really to start a business.
Yeah.
When I started doing more of the artistic stuff, I realized actually I'm an artist. I'm not a manager.
Okay.
And the more I've done this, I felt my brain changed over the last 10 years. I'm nowhere near as good as I used to be at that stuff, but the less I want to do it. So you have to know what you're good at. And I'm very good at knowing writing wise what I'm bad at. I'm very honest about it.
Yeah.
And say similarly with management, what am I not good at? I'm not good at social media. So I have someone doing that for me. So know what you're good at, what you're bad at.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good message to put out there, I think. So you got the website. You talked to, when we were off air, you talked about the way in which things have changed. Talk to me about the marketplace and how it all works.
Well, comics are different from books. That people will go into Waterstones and they'll choose what book they want to buy and then buy it to read on their phone as they're walking out the shop. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. With comics, you actually have the opposite effect. People will buy digitally, like it, and then want a physical copy. So it doesn't cannibalize sales. It actually improves sales, digital sales. However, the market has changed in that people used to want to buy physical copies of it, but it's become more like Netflix now, with things like Global Comics and Fables. You pay a monthly fee for unlimited amount of material, but then the revenue is split amongst all the publishers based on what is read. So before you used to sell, I don't know, let's say 100 copies of your book. Now you may get 200 views, but because there's shared by so many other people, you actually get less revenue.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose in some ways it's like the music industry with Spotify and or like you say, like with Netflix. So how has that impacted on what you've been doing over the last sort of 12 years or so? And when did this change come about?
Again, I don't seem to notice like direct steps, but it's a gradual thing. How it's changed is it's also Kickstarter has become so important for comics. It's like Keanu Reeves launched Berserker and raised over $1.4 million, I think, and then Good Omens made $2.5 million on their Kickstarter. It's a way of all the different categories on Kickstarter, comics is the most profitable one and most successful one.
Yeah.
So you also have add-ons that you can do. So like handwritten scripts or things that people can't buy otherwise, they'll pay premium for on the Kickstarter to get.
Exclusive stuff.
Yeah. And so artists, it's easier to draw digitally, but people will pay for physical artwork, like original prints. So they'll pay a lot of money for that. So it's a trade-off as to what you want to do, because you can work faster and make corrections easier digitally, but you have other stuff to sell. So the market's changed in many ways, but it's moving more towards direct to consumer. So as a creator, unfortunately, comic shops are being squished a little bit because creators are selling directly to their audience, and people aren't going to comic shops as much as they used to. Which is sad, which is bad for everyone. But markets change.
Yeah.
When was the last time you got some camera film developed?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many industries and businesses that the world is changing, and it's hard to kind of keep up and adapt and those sorts of things. You have that massive collection behind you of comics. I'd imagine the consumers are consuming on a fairly regular basis. They're comic fans, right?
Yes.
What does that look like? I mean, obviously, normally with e-commerce, we talk about the frequency of purchase, but I guess with the advent of these what would you call it? Kind of subscription service, if you like. I'm able to pay a monthly fee and consume as much content as I like. And is that pretty much it?
that's what some people do. And then there's also the free platform. So the giant is Webtoons, which has so much free content up there. People create their own, but they're renowned for not paying their artists. They create, because you own everything, but you upload it, and then you're fighting amongst everyone else to like, see me, watch me. And then what they'll do is they split it into like curated or discover what you want. If it's curated, then I think each deal is different, but they'll own some of it, but then they'll push you to the front so people see your stuff, and so you get loads of fans. And so what some people do is they do that for one title. If they get famous, then they move off Webtoons because they don't get paid as much as they should do.
Right.
And there's this comic here called Let's Play. Just here, this one, right? And I think book 1 got $100,000 for Kickstarter for volume 1. 2 was 200,000. 3 was 300,000, because people read it for free on Webtoons, but then they launch a collected book, and people will pay for it because they like material. So you have to balance between getting famous and then monetizing.
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, which does work. I don't do social media, so I'm very bad at that.
What keeps you up at night? What was the biggest challenge for you and the business right now?
It's always cash flow, because ideas aren't a problem. I have so many ideas. I can show you how but you have to get the comic made, which is expensive. You're paying for the artist, and then then sell it. And it's people want, when's the next one coming out? And you have to balance between, because if you have, when I first started reading comics, there's so much out there you don't know what to get. But when you see the series, you go, that must be good for it to have had several volumes in it
and be continuing.
Yes. So that was like that was a good thing for me. But some people also, if there's too many volumes, they don't want to get, because manga, some of it, really, all manga, in my opinion, this is controversial, I'm gonna get cancelled for this, but all manga can be cut in half. There's so much filler because it's just the way that the studio systems work there. It's just some fan service and just nothing much happens. Like, you can cut it in half. This is Lone Wolf and Cub, right? The series here. Now, the last book in this, which is this one, if I remember correctly, that is all one fight scene. Now, there's no need for that. There's no need for that. Because it's the end of the comic, right? So they're just milking the audience to pay more because they're gonna.
That's just one fight scene. That's crazy.
Well, it's been building up since the start. They finally,
Yeah. So what tips would you have for aspiring founders, whether it be ecom, whatever? What's the sort of biggest lesson for you?
When I started, they said, I remember reading about that. Think about however much money you think you'll need to get going, and then double it, and then double it again, because that's what you need.
Yeah.
And I say double it again and again, because it's always going to be more than you expect. And so this is very typical. Look, you've done this podcast for a while, right? You've had a lot of founders giving tips and advice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have a great tip to give other than just keep going. Because there's so many companies.
I would say, do you know what? That's probably one of the most common tips is just keep going and believe.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I see amongst founders is everybody has that belief. And we talked earlier about when you were working and you had a job, and then it was more a question. Well, I've got no choice. This is going to happen, And I think that's you're not the first person to say to have words like that. It's keep going. It's very true.
Yeah. Robert Kirkman, who's one of the most successful guys in comics, he made The Walking Dead and Invincible TV series as well. He doesn't like talking about it, but there's one point where he needed a job, and he went to work at Walmart, at Amazon, like packing boxes and stuff, and thought, no, I have to keep my drive. I can't take this job because then I've got safety. But he'd maxed out all his credit cards, trying to get Walking Dead going something, but he'd lie on his living room floor and shake with fear and then he went past it. But that was like how. And there was a point where actually, I probably shouldn't mention this, but there was a point many years ago when I was so nervous about things that every morning I'd wake up and I'd throw up straight away.
Oh wow, yeah, that's and that was what that's the pressure.
Yeah. And my wife was thinking, maybe you should just get a job because this is stress. It's just too much. I was like, no, because so many.
And how do you feel looking? How do you feel looking back now?
Well, I was thinner then. That's a joke. It wasn't a fun time. I'm glad it's no longer like that, I guess, is what I can say.
Yeah, sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Am I glad I went through it? I don't know. I don't think it did me any good.
No, sure, yeah. Do you think you could have handled things differently? With hindsight, looking back, do you think you could have done things differently?
Well, some people are just built differently. Some people just have no fear, and people will follow them, which is great, but also has a downside to it because they don't know when they're wrong. It's so it's funny because initially, just having a presence and attitude of mind is more. Style over substance initially is more important. Over time, substance is more important. But I go off on tangents all the time, so my mind just keeps picking around.
Right? No problem at all.
But the actual question you're asking, could you remind me, please?
I've lost my train of thought. Okay. But next question is more about like what does 2025 look like for you? We're actually 5 months in. We're not far off halfway through, which I can't quite blame myself.
Well, I saw my first film script this year.
Did you? Wow.
So the producer, I probably should know. I won't tell you what the plot is, but he liked my comics and he said, "What are the stuff you're working on?" So I told him the outline for a plot I had, and he's like, "Stop, write the screenplay. I'll buy it." And so I sort of sold it before I wrote it, which is weird, but he just liked the concept so much.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to share because they even wanted the name changed off the story so that to not give away anything about it. It's going to be a fairly small budget horror film. Then also it looks likely a TV show might happen as well. And the big thing we have also is we're launching Black Mirror's official comic books. So that so if anyone is interested in seeing it, I think it looks really good. It's blackmirrorcomics.com. You can sign up for it and you get a chance to be drawn into it if you just get the emails.
Brilliant. I'll definitely have a look at that for sure.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you get selected.
Excellent. Good stuff. Go on.
No, it's just funny because one of the rewards we offer in Kickstarters is to be drawn into the comic. And almost everyone wants to be good looking and a villain.
Like, villain, really? Okay.
They all want to be evil. It's
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or have horrible things happen to them.
See, I'd want to be the hero. I would.
Some people do, but not many. Most want to be evil. I think it's because your chance to do something different. It's funny when you have this
space.
You have this choose your own adventure games like that where you can like with Bandersnatch. I tried it as well. Whenever I play them, I do what I would do in real life. I make those choices. My wife is. Sure. That's madness. This is your one chance to be someone different. So she picks the most horrific things that character could do.
Excellent. Good stuff. Neil, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate you joining us. I think that's very, very interesting story and good luck with the film script and the potential TV show.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on your podcast.
You're welcome.